Good morning. I'm Dennis Weiss for Eagle Communications, and we're at the Eisenhower Presidential Library and Museum for a brand new program we're going to call Why Like Ike. We've all got our pins on.
Yes, we do.
We have William Snyder, you're the curator here.
That's right.
And we have Tim Reeves, he's the deputy director. And so you folks are the experts, and I'm here to ask questions about what you have, but here's what I can contribute. Sam told me we're going to focus on leadership, vision, and diplomacy. Does anybody in the world represent leadership, vision, and diplomacy better than Dwight David Eisenhower, Tim?
It would be difficult to think of another statesman from the 20th century who did, unless you're up in the league of an Eisenhower or a Winston Churchill. I mean, not just from the breadth of his vision as a military commander, but also as president of the United States, and many things we can talk about where he looked not just at what was the immediate solution to a problem, but many years down the road, whether that's documenting the Holocaust or upgrading our transportation infrastructure. It's just a very long list of accomplishments.
We have some artifacts behind us that people are looking at in the camera, and we have the iconic photograph of Ike before D-Day speaking to the troops. And I have loved reading people's comments over the years about what they think he was talking about. It doesn't matter to me. In fact, I read one time that he was describing a trout fishing trip to some of these people, and the context it was written seemed sort of negative. And I said to myself, you're about to launch those young men into a battle of truly biblical proportions had never been done. Talking about something calming, again, leadership, vision, and diplomacy.
That's right.
And Wally Strobel, number 23, who Ike's talking to in that famous picture, was from Wisconsin, and that's where Ike and his brothers used to go fly fishing. And so that probably gives the story some credence.
A gifted communicator in all things, and I frankly, I know this, he was doing his very best to inspire men to do their jobs that day.
Absolutely.
That's right.
What a wonderful leader. Okay, we have some artifacts, and William, you have brought some things that are very unique, probably never seen on camera before. And I'm going to keep my hands in my lap, even though I have the white gloves here.
Yes, please.
But it's interesting to come to this facility because there is what seems to me a nearly endless amount of things that you can see that are new and different that you didn't know were here. So William, what did you bring us today?
Well, what we have today up front is the pen that was used to sign the Unconditional Surrender with Nazi Germany at the end of World War II. Interestingly, though, Ike did not use that. He did not meet with the German commanders. He did not want to give them any more credence or any more power. Mainly because the concentration camps had just been discovered, and Ike was furious, appalled. I'm not sure there's an accurate word for his feelings, but that pen was used to sign the Unconditional Surrender and was given to Eisenhower after that.
That's an interesting story. I think artifacts, it's a simple pen, it's a simple fountain pen, but the story is so unique. Including unique to Eisenhower. You mentioned to us before the camera came on that was in character for Eisenhower. Yes, probably motivated by the horror of the Holocaust that had just been discovered, but he also saw the fact that they were vanquished.
Yes.
And they need to. So what was the only question he asked the field marshal?
Do you understand the terms of the agreement?
And the answer was?
Yeah.
Yeah. And what did Ike say then?
He said,
You are dismissed.
You are dismissed. Yeah. What a fantastic representation of the military struggle, right? But then what happened in Europe under Ike's leadership? Tim?
After the war?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, he became the military commander and helped, resettle displaced persons, administer Germany until he was called back to be the Army Chief of Staff.
Started the reconstruction.
Well, exactly, the entire reconstruction of the country.
While the military transaction was pretty cut and dried right there, that's my point. Ike also led the way to reconstructing a civil society.
Yes, he did.
Yes.
You know, we saw Robert Edsel here this last week, and that whole process of the Monuments Men and recovering those art treasures were again an effort to rebuild the civil society. Never had been done in modern warfare.
That's right.
That's right.
And Eisenhower, in terms of his leadership, of course, we all have this picture of him with this very genial demeanor, and he always has that ready grin.
Yes.
But he was, as his son John recently said, at least 75% cold-blooded, that Ike really did have this, iron core. And he never would mention an opponent by name. When he was fighting behind the scenes against Senator Joseph McCarthy, never mentioned McCarthy's name, never mentioned Adlai Stevenson, his two-time opponent's name, and he would never acknowledge a vanquished foe. And so he would not talk to Stevenson, he would not really engage those Germans who surrendered. So Ike was really pretty tough. Beneath that friendly demeanor, there was a really tough guy.
Interesting. Okay, William, the next thing you have in front of me is an early version of a teleprompter.
That's right. We are very fortunate to have in the museum's collection the teleprompter scroll, the complete text of Ike's famous farewell address when he left office.
Isn't that something?
Yes.
Really?
So, most people are probably familiar with the term that Ike coined, the military-industrial complex.
Right.
So.
Yeah, we again here at this library, its relevance. We had Robert Gates, Secretary Robert Gates here a few years ago, 5 years ago, how time flies. And I've always viewed Secretary Gates' speech on the steps here as his military-industrial complex speech.
Yes.
It very much followed the theme of what Eisenhower said in his farewell. And to think that is here in your facility, our facility, and laying on the table in front of us just past my white gloves is kind of amazing.
Well, one thing that really strikes me from Eisenhower's first public remarks on politics, which was given in a speech here in Abilene in 1909, until an article that he wrote almost on his deathbed for Reader's Digest that was published a month after he was dead on his middle way philosophy, Ike was really concerned with concentrations of power, no matter where they were, whether they were government or, say, private economic power. And that's exactly what that speech is about, and that's why it's so representative of Eisenhower's, personal philosophy.
I think we're a little biased, and it's okay to say so, right? We like Ike, it says right here on our pins, doesn't it, William? So this program is Why Like Ike. So we're here to give examples, some of them in artifacts, some of them in testimony of why the country still should be interested in Dwight David Eisenhower. Carl is always quick to tell me that we set another record for researchers last year.
We did.
And he told me that the year before that, and the year before that. So the trend is clear.
Yes.
Somewhere in the world, many people are still interested in Dwight David Eisenhower. 3
of the last 5 years, we have set in-house research records here in Abilene. Today, we have a full research room. We have researchers from around the world. About 25% of them come from foreign countries. So around the world, people, even if they don't exactly like Ike, they're interested in Ike.
Right.
And so they come to Abilene to learn more about him.
What did you bring in the boxes today, Tim?
Well, a couple of goodies.
Look at him rub his hands together.
Technical archives term for them. You mentioned Eisenhower and the Holocaust.
Right.
And on April 12, 1945, Ike toured the German camp at Ohrdorf, which was a sub-camp of Buchenwald. And there's a famous quote. As you said, he was so angry that he really couldn't even describe what he said. He said these things beggar description, meaning there are really no words. And Eisenhower also, I think he was one of those guys who, he was just so astute that he knew, in knowing human nature, that someday, for some reason, someone would try to deny that the Holocaust ever happened. And I think I just realized that I brought the wrong document.
That's okay.
I won't transition to it yet. And so what he did, as soon as he got back to his headquarters, he wrote a very long message to General Marshall and said, again, we need to get a delegation of congressional representatives here and journalists to ensure that these allegations will never be dismissed as mere propaganda, because he knew that there would be attempts to deny it. In fact, I hate to say it, but here at the library we hear from people almost monthly who say there were no concentration camps, only the concentration camps that Ike ran after the war, in which he starved 2 million German soldiers to death. And so it just shows you, again, that long-term vision he had, in this case of a sad tendency of human nature.
Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but I read that note a couple of years ago now, and it seems to me it had a line in it that he wanted to testify he had seen that with his own eyes.
You're right, he did.
That to the jacket behind you, I think that's his jacket. It has
That's
5
his
stars
jacket.
on it.
Yes, it does.
As a 5-star general. He wanted to personally let the world know that he had seen it. This is before the internet and we could watch it live on YouTube.
That's right.
The personal testimony of, at that time, the most influential man on the planet probably, could say, I saw this with my eyes.
And President Truman at that time had been in office for 1 week. He immediately agreed. Winston Churchill agreed, and within a week they had inspectors on the ground to start accumulating that documentation.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. What a tremendous story. What else have you got for us on the table?
Well, the one I pulled out, which is a good document as well, this is the actual, and I have it in protective sleeve here, the actual message that Ike sent to the combined chiefs of staff saying that the war was over. And there had been a lot of debate in his headquarters circles of, what kind of grandiloquent statement are we going to make to the world to announce that this great conflict was over. And Ike, and I think this really tells you something about his character, this is Ike's message. The mission of this Allied force was fulfilled at 0241 local time, May 7th, 1945. After all the drama of those years, that was his simple message saying it was over. So he wasn't looking to make some historic statement that would be identified with Dwight Eisenhower making that announcement, in history. It was just that simple message saying it's over.
Read some of the notes back and forth to command from Eisenhower and to the president. I found many of them written in casual almost language. There would be the military section, but when he was communicating, often in handwritten form, it was somewhat casual. There was no attempt at grandiose statements. It was just a matter of fact, and here's what is happening, here's the issues, and here's what I think, or what I saw in this case. So you're the what I saw guy. You're in charge of what people can come here and see.
That's right.
So take us through vision that Eisenhower has, and so what people can come in and see, what represents a vision of Eisenhower. So give us some examples of what people can see.
Well, one of the things we like to do, both for our visitors who return and want to see something new, but it also helps us preserve the artifacts, is that we often rotate items on display. We do have almost 70,000 items in the collection to choose from, and many of them do represent Ike's vision or personal statements or personal feelings or personal inspirations. And as many folks know, Ike was a painter, and right behind you is one of the presidents that he admired the most, George Washington, and that's his copy of the famous Gilbert Stuart portrait of Washington that was unfinished at the time, so Ike made his copy just the same. And that's one of his paintings that we get to put on display, and people get to see.
So that's an Eisenhower painting behind me?
That is an Eisenhower painting, yes.
Very interesting. It's interesting, history, I think you either have a sense of love for history or it's yet to be developed. I won't say you don't.
You have to come here to be inspired.
That's right. It's yet to be developed, and that's what we're for, right?
Absolutely.
So, but the fact that he wore the coat and he painted the painting, and anybody that comes here can have the same experience that we are today, which is to see the painting, see the jacket, and put context to the history of the leadership, vision, and diplomacy of Dwight David Eisenhower.
Absolutely.
Tremendous.
Yeah, it's one thing to see him maybe on the History Channel or another network, but here, you can encounter, not quite firsthand, but at least, items that belong to Ike, things he created, things he used, and so it does give you that extra dimension, I think, to appreciating his history.
Yeah. So in the archive section, which the boxes represent, some years ago, I had privilege to be taken through there on a tour before the world was quite as secure as it is today. But I think as I walked by the rows of those boxes with those white labels on the front, And the section that I walked by were after action reports from World War II. Just box after box after box after box after box. And knowing that inside most of them were either handwritten or hand typed, obviously.
Yep.
That was how we communicated in those days. But the thousands and thousands of pages of knowledge that is in that vault that is available to researchers as we look to face the modern struggles in many of the same places that Mr. Eisenhower had to face them.
Well, you're exactly right. And we're up somewhere probably between 26 and 27 million of those pages here at the Eisenhower Library, in addition to about 350,000 photographs from that era as well. But the point you make, Mr. Edsall's talk last week about the monuments men, who Ike had a hand in developing to save European art, recover European art from the Nazis, and the parallels he drew, Mr. Edsall, between the Nazis and what's going on with ISIS now. The same sort of looting and destruction, which unfortunately shows us that these things never entirely go away.
Right.
right.
So we do have to take those steps to.
I don't know about
document
you fellows, but I'm often comforted by the fact that this library is here in the heartland and is available for people to walk in, tell your research staff, I'd like to see the files on, and they can bring them and give them those files for their research purposes. Because Mr. Eisenhower represents solutions to many problems that we still face today. And leadership is always valuable examples of it. So I feel great comfort that Eisenhower is still serving today. Why like Ike? I think he's still serving us as one of the greatest leaders the free world has ever seen.
And if you want, maybe perhaps the best known example of his leadership is what's known as the in case of failure note. And it's the note that Ike wrote before the D-Day invasion. And he wrote one before every big operation and usually threw them away, but held on to this when eventually his naval aide got it and saved it, fortunately, for history. But I think it tells you so many things about Ike, and it's always worth, of course, repeating, so I'll read it quickly. Ike wrote, "Our landings in the Cherbourg-Havre area have failed to gain a satisfactory foothold, and I have withdrawn the troops. My decision to attack at this time and place was based upon the best information available. The troops, the air, and the Navy did all that bravery and devotion to duty could do. If any blame or fault attaches to the attempt, it is mine alone." So here's not a corporate leader, a political leader saying, well, mistakes were made, and we're going to form a committee and look into see what happened.
He didn't say I heard about it on the news either.
That's right. I've been informed that.
I've been informed.
Takes direct responsibility.
Yeah.
Yes.
If it goes wrong, it's on me. So, that's just, I can't think of a better example of Ike's leadership legacy than that document.
Isn't that something? Yeah, that's inspiring. What else do we have? We've got 2 minutes to wrap up. So we're looking to the next show, William, already. And we want people to be excited that monthly we'll be here and to talk about why like Ike and to talk about artifacts, talk about history. We would welcome input from the public on some of the questions
Absolutely.
they may have
that would
about
be great.
things. That would be tremendous, and they can get a hold of you guys here or myself at Eagle. That'll work. So what do you think you're going to pull out of the archives for us next time?
Well, again, we have such a choice. Maybe we'll look at the interstate highway system.
Oh, that would be a good
which
one.
is something most of us encounter daily. We also have the Boyhood Home that we want to share more of.
Absolutely.
We have Ike's, of course, burial place, and maybe the stories behind Ike's funeral and Mamie's and their son's Dowd's. And there's history all over this site. And sometimes just with the changes that have been made, we lose sight that this was Ike's old neighborhood. Right. So I think there are a lot of interesting programs we could do both inside and outside of these buildings and with a variety of our staff members.
Okay, so we're going to see some variety of objects.
Absolutely.
We're going to shuffle people around.
More documents, more pictures.
I noticed that when Sam gave me the cheat sheet, if you will, it had your title, and just had my name. I want you to know that I am a special assistant to the director. I have my volunteer's badge at home that says that right there, so I have a title.
We're going to double your pay.
Okay,
Yeah, absolutely.
Great, that's great. Well, Tim, I appreciate you bringing those boxes. I love those boxes.
We'll bring more next time.
Bring more
Absolutely.
boxes. William, the teleprompter, I may have to put a glove on and just touch the tip of it to say I did.
I think we can do that.
what a tremendous legacy these artifacts represent, and we so appreciate what you have done to get Eisenhower in front of the world. Look forward to next time. Folks, you're going to enjoy your insight into this facility. You will want to know why Like Ike, and you'll be telling a friend. For Eagle Communications, I'm Dennis Weiss. Thanks, fellas.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching.